Hello, everyone. Welcome to Phoenixville Public Library. I'm Mark Pinto, the Adult Services Director here, and we welcome you to tonight's program. Initially, I was a bit skeptical about the need for our program tonight because we know everything that we see online and on TV is true, right? Right. Well, not exactly, which is why we have our special guest with us tonight, Pam Steager, who is the Director of Community Engagement for Courageous RI, that's Rhode Island, a media education lab initiative that brings people together for interactive information and conversation to counter disinformation, enhance civic participation, and improve media literacy for students, educators, and the general public. So to tell us now tonight how we can be better consumers of media and survive the current election season and beyond, we welcome Pam Steager. Pam, take it away.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for that nice introduction. One thing he did not say is that I grew up not far from here in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. I graduated from North Penn High School and spent 3 years out in Happy Valley at Penn State. So I know my way around, and a lot of my family still lives here in Pennsylvania, but I migrated to Rhode Island a long time ago. I've now lived there longer than anywhere else. And I work for, as Mark said, the Media Education Lab at URI, at the university there. What I want to do, now that you know who I am, is at least ask you a question, and people who are watching online, I invite you to share via chat your answers. I want to ask you, what is it that is the most vexing to you about being in a swing state during a political or election season? And how do you take care of your own mental health during that time and try and survive the onslaught that I know you get here?
Onslaught's a good word.
Same commercials over and over.
Commercials over and over again. And every commercial break. I mean, in Rhode Island, we're a tiny little state. We're very blue, so nobody ever bothers to come to us. So we don't get it. Every political ad during election season is about our local representatives, and we get two of each. Representatives in Congress, so that isn't a lot there either. But when I come down to visit my daughter in Pennsylvania, it's like, whoa! And of course, you've been having the visits lately as well. So my son-in-law's plane was delayed because Joe's helicopter had to take off, and then the jet that had his limousines took off before they could take off, and just traffic jams everywhere they go, right? So
there's a comment from Zoom. We're drowning in electoral advertising, not just the commercials, but the flyers, brochures, the billboards, the signs. There's no escape.
Yes, it's so true, and I have been noticing it. It's just so different from where I came down from yesterday. And my daughter brought in from the mail. She went, "Mom, you need to see this." She's like, "Dum, dum, 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 dum." And her way of dealing with it is they all go right into recycling. So she said, I find other ways to figure out about, who I want to vote for, and I'm not going to use that. Okay, how about ways that you survive? What are you doing? Not listening. Yeah, I can understand. So are you just not watching TV at all, or do you?
No, I can't say that.
Mute your commercials?
You can do that.
Yeah,
Me too,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Thanks to God for the mute button.
Yeah,
But you're
exactly.
still seeing the images and it's just the production of the commercials, the fear mongering.
Fear-mongering, that's.
Okay, so I want to just tell you what my agenda is today. We already did introductions a little bit. I'm going to share guidelines that we used in Rhode Island. We got a grant from the Department of Homeland Security, who was recognizing media literacy as a prevention tool against targeted violence and domestic terrorism. And so for the past 2 years, we have been rolling out this program called Courageous RI. And in it, because we were hoping people from all ends of the political spectrum and everybody in between, which is most of us, were going to attend our online conversations. We decided that we really should come up with some guidelines for how we could have civil conversations instead of contentious confrontations. So I'm going to share them. And then we'll go into media literacy, what and why, a little bit about conflict entrepreneurs, who are they and how do they work, the influencers, who are they and how do they influence us, and then a little tiny bit about falling down the rabbit hole, an experience that we probably have all had at some point in time if we have lives online. And then hopefully, as I said earlier, I'm going to, have some time for questions. People in the chat, I hope you can participate using the chat format for those online. And at the end, I'm also hoping we'll have some time for reflection. So the guidelines that we came up with were to speak for yourself and out of your own experiences, to allow others to speak for themselves, to share the time, to allow others to finish speaking and to take turns, to stay curious, to ask honest questions if you don't understand something that somebody's saying, to pause and take time for reflection, especially if you feel that your emotions are your buttons are being pushed and your emotions are rising to the surface. Practice active listening, so listen generously. Assume good intentions while also recognizing that your words have an impact. And stay engaged. So when possible, close on the unnecessary programs, applications and notifications, and put your phones, especially right now, on silent if you haven't already. Thank you. So, how many people feel like they already know what media literacy means? Oh, thank you. I started studying media literacy and pretty soon after started presenting and practicing it, and up until about 25 years ago, I started in 1999, and up until about 2015, every time I said the phrase, like, what do you do? I work in media literacy, I'd get these like blank stares, or oh, that's interesting. And sometimes people would venture, does that have something to do with computers? And it does, because obviously it's all about the fact that literacy now in the 21st century is not just, it can't be just about reading and writing and analyzing books and poems and essays like I did when I was in school. It really needs to expand to the digital universe and have, especially our students, but really all of us, ask critical questions about what you read, watch, see, hear, play, and use. So what are those questions? There are some in the media literacy field who use 7 questions. There are some who use 10. But at the Media Education Lab, we feel as though these 5 are really the crux of what we need to know to really get into an analysis of any media message from any medium. Who's the author and what is the purpose? That's pretty much what we used to ask about books, right? What techniques are used to attract and hold your attention, which is much more relevant in the video and digital world with all of the images that we have. What lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented in this message? How might different people interpret the message? And what is omitted from the message? So we're going to jump right in and put them to work. So I'm putting you to work. So I will do some of the analysis of this media message. Does anybody recognize what format this is? Like where might I have found this
picture,
Pardon?
the picture
The
itself.
picture. Can you tell what format that is or where it might have come from?
I do a campus somewhere, college campus.
Okay, so you're thinking that it's a picture of a real thing. So actually this is a meme, which is, I think defines something like a unit of communication that spreads by imitation. So this is very popular format on social media for young people especially. And this actual picture has been used a bunch of times, like a lot of memes are, and the people who create it just change what's on the sign, and they change the bottom message. And then they post it, and if somebody likes it, they send it on, and send it on, and send it on, and send it on. And so the author of a meme like this is kind of hard to figure out, right? Because who was it who originally took this picture or created this picture? Is it a picture of just, a real scene, or is it a composite of different scenes that some artist put together? And who came up with the words? Was it the person that you saw it in your social media feed who sent it to you? Or were they sending it on from somebody else and just part of that chain of imitation? So it's really hard to figure out who the author is of a meme. What's the purpose of this particular meme, do you think? Why did somebody want to send this message out into the webosphere? Critical thinking takes time. Slow down.
Well, we live in a pretty fast world.
Yeah,
A lot of things happen quickly.
yes.
People
We live
don't
in a
really-
very fast-paced
People
world.
don't really analyze what they really are.
Exactly. It's really a call for critical thinking and analysis, isn't it? Which is why we obviously like this meme. But so then what techniques are used to attract and hold your attention? What caught your attention when you looked at this?
The sign.
The sign?
Sign itself. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
The dude holding it,
The dude holding it. Does he remind you of anybody?
John Lennon.
That is exactly who I thought. Somebody else, a colleague of mine, thinks of the guy from The Matrix. She thinks it looks more like that. But yeah, I think, content creators, message creators use things like that, like familiar looking people or something that you might identify with. And so, but John Lennon was my first thought. What are the people walking by doing?
My question was, are they walking by or are they at a rally, like looking at something? I get a feeling like they're looking at somebody on stage.
Oh, okay. Great. So, okay, and that is exactly how we're different, right? I saw people walking by and not paying attention to this guy at all, which is, why I thought, the sign sort of made sense. But that they might be at a rally and looking, and this guy just is holding up his sign. Great.
The guy on the right looks like he's ready to say something to mock the guy holding the
Uh-huh.
sign.
Yeah.
He's got that look on his face.
And I kind of love the colors too, right? The colors are very kind of primary colors. The red brick, the blue stripe, the yellow, this mannequin of whatever that is, and then that lovely building in the back. I have no idea whether this was put together or it's an actual photograph that they started with, but I think it definitely was meant to capture your attention in a number of ways. What lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented here?
Everybody's dressed for winter except the guy holding the sign. He's just got a shirt on. I don't know if that means anything.
Oh, that's interesting. That's another interesting
With the hats.
observation, that everybody else looks like they're dressed for winter, but he's either braving the cold or in another season altogether. But most of the people in this are young, right? So it might be aimed at young people, or at least have that value of youth that we tend to value in the United States. The points of view are very clear on his signs, right? And on the words on the bottom. Critical thinking takes time, slow down.
And the mannequin has no head.
That mannequin has always bothered me, but it's part of what draws you in, like it's a mystery piece, right? How might different people interpret the message?
Well, I think that because he's dressed that way, that would attract people's attention, because everybody else, it's obviously cold there, and he's not.
Yeah. I think you're right about that. And, maybe people, I don't know how somebody, well, first of all, younger people who can't read are just going to be looking at the images, right? Older people might not even pay attention because it looks like it's all about young people. Some people, might think that guy's trying to change minds, and they don't like people who try and change your minds. There are definitely different ways that different people interpret every single message. We all bring ourselves and our own lived experiences to everything that we see that comes into our view. And what is omitted from the message? Anything you can think of?
Thinking about what?
Thinking about what? Yeah, critical thinking about what? He's doing a pretty broad stroke there, right? Yeah, okay, good job. So that brings us to why media literacy matters. And these are the key ideas that I want you to remember at this point. It takes time to critically analyze media messages, and the process involves exposure to multiple interpretations and points of view. All media messages are constructed by authors who have a particular point of view. I constructed this message, right? I chose which slides out of the thousands of slides we have at the Media Ed Lab and put them together in this particular order, and I have a particular point of view. And as much as we try to remain unbiased and not partisan at all in the Media Education Lab, that's somewhat impossible because we all come with whatever viewpoint we have. Media messages are all selective and incomplete. You can't say everything in every message, right? And so there's something left out of everything. And when you're in a film and you're cutting the scenes out, even if it was a nice scene, but you have to get it down to your 2 hours or your hour and 45 minutes so that it can play in a theater, or the 22 minutes so that it can play on TV and have enough room for the ads that pay for it. You have to cut things, and so all messages are selective and incomplete. When activating your media literacy competencies, hopefully you may be inspired to want to learn more. Is this a media message?
Yes.
Yes, I think so. And no matter whether your idea is about graffiti is that it's vandalism or it's art, the message is fear sells. And that's a good message because some savvy media producers are very aware that the emotions that create the likes and shares that can lead to becoming a media influencer, and fear is one of those. Can you think of other emotions that sell?
Excitement.
Pardon?
Excitement.
Excitement, sure.
Love.
Love, yes. Yeah, good. And anger, I think, is another one that has been used. So right now I want to talk a little bit about who the media influencers are. When I was growing up, media influencers in society were thought leaders. So they were people who were experts in their field, and they had authority. So somebody like Walter Cronkite, Albert Einstein, Dwight Eisenhower was the president for a number of my childhood years. And my dad had served in World War II, and so he thought Dwight Eisenhower was, next to God. But those were the people that, that had authority. And the symbols of authority are things like titles, doctor, lawyer, whatever, clothes that go with the profession, status objects, like a gavel, and the jargon that goes along with the profession that they're in. Now, since the introduction of social media, we have a different kind of influencer, and those are influencers who create their influence based on something called authenticity. What makes them feel real to someone? Because those other authority figures always seemed a bit too far away. But in social media, it feels like you're having a relationship with someone, and if you can have a relationship with someone like Trevor Noah or Joe Rogan or Lionel Messi or Beyonce or Kim Kardashian, then it feels really wonderful. And you follow them and you listen to them and they become influencers. So there's even these different levels of influencer that companies that sell the influence of these kinds of people will let buyers know, well, this person is a nano influencer. They only have, 8,000 followers. That's about what you can afford. But if you're the big bucks people, then you can probably afford to get a celebrity influencer to hawk your product or talk about something on their social media that will help you make some money. And it helps them make money because the more followers they have, the more hits they have, the more likes they have, the more shares they have, that's currency in today's media market. But today, anyone with a social media account kind of can be an influencer because they've got their own megaphone, right? They've got their own platform to share their ideas. And so whether you have 5,000 or 23,000 or 14 followers, you're still influencing the people who are your friends and followers. And if they believe in you and what you say, that's the quality of authenticity. And the symbols of authenticity are a little different. They usually still mean that somebody has to have some expertise in their field, like entertainment or sports or whatever. But attractiveness goes a long way in authenticity in social media. Self-disclosure seems to be a big thing, which is not the kind of thing that a Walter Cronkite would have done. Remember, does anybody else remember the time when John Kennedy died? Yes. And Walter Cronkite, that was actually the black and white picture of him where he took his glasses off and wiped his eyes. And it was like shocking because it was the first time anybody showed any kind of emotion on the news. But that's part of displays of emotion and self-disclosure and making mistakes are all part of what make social media influencers authentic. And that's what people like. They like people who are authentic. And it's one of the problems with politics, right? Because a lot of people just feel as though politicians are not authentic. They're not being their authentic selves. They're just putting on whatever face they need to put on and say whatever words they need to say in order to get votes and get elected. So now what are we doing here?
Okay. Turn up your volume in the Zoom.
Okay.
And try not to talk. And then play the video.
All right, we're going to try and play a video. It may have a feedback, but it's only 2 minutes long, so we're going to do the best we can.
Still brand new to Congress. I've only been there 100 days. And I don't know if I'm not supposed to say this out loud, but it's true and important, and if you don't know this, you need to. It's really clear from working there for just a few months that most of the really angry voices in Congress are totally faking it. these people who have built their brands around being perpetually outraged, it's an act. I've seen a bunch of examples. Here's one. I've been in committee meetings that are open to the press and committee meetings that are closed. The same people who act like maniacs during the open meetings are suddenly calm and rational during the closed ones. Why? Because there aren't any cameras in the closed meetings, so their incentives are different. What I've seen is that members of Congress are surrounded by negative incentives. There are rewards for bad behavior. You know what the big one is? Being able to reach you. The big thing that modern media and modern politicians have learned is that if they can keep you angry, they'll hold your attention. And they both want your attention. So if you're a politician and you show certain media outlets that you can help them keep their audience angry, they'll give you their audience. And because so many politicians are willing to play that game, now they're in competition with each other to see how fake angry they can be. So that's real bad. But here's something good. What I love about this, about communicating with you directly, is that the incentives are different. They can be positive. They can be about speaking to you with respect and real information and in a normal tone of voice. Because if I can talk to you directly, I don't have to yell. And if you don't have to yell to be heard, the whole conversation changes. So going forward, when you hear some enraged member of Congress say something absurd, your first question shouldn't be, how can they possibly believe that? It should be, do we think they actually do? Because they probably don't. And for those who want to see politics look less like WWE, I will keep you posted.
Okay, so that was Jeff Jackson, who's a representative from North Carolina, but he is currently running for Attorney General of North Carolina because he has been attacked so much for just that video, as well as his others that are talking to the people of North Carolina and just telling it like it is, or how he sees it, his perspective and his experience inside Congress. And he sees a lot of corruption, and he's a lawyer, and he wants to be Attorney General so that he can take on some of the corruption in North Carolina.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah.
See, I'm sitting here, I'm so jaded, I don't believe it's him.
You don't?
I don't trust that it's him, I don't believe it's him.
Wow.
And I don't believe that he's really saying that stuff. That's how jaded I am with
Wow.
social media.
Yeah.
It's
And
like-
you're not alone.
Yeah.
You're not alone. I mean, people feel as though Sandy Hook didn't really happen. People feel as though the moon landing was filmed, right? It didn't really happen. You're not alone. And that's how jaded or mistrusting people have become, because you have seen reasons to be mistrustful, right?
Just the fact that his lips weren't lined up with what he was saying.
Well,
I mean, that's ridiculous, but.
that actually had to do with our hack here to try and be able to show you the video. But I want to bring your attention to the comments. You know, like Jeff Jackson voted to ban TikTok. This originally played on TikTok. And he now has an X account and a YouTube account and 1.3 million followers. So, he's one of those celebrity influencers now. But so the difference, Jeff Jackson voted to ban TikTok to all the TikTok users who were watching this at the time, and then Jeff Jackson for president in 2024. Alan, also, could you
Yeah.
question?
Yep, let me bring up
great.
this.
I'm glad I can see the questions pop up from the chat.
Also, you could question if that is a performance of authenticity.
Yes, well, Alan is great because Alan is your local
Still
media
brand new to
literacy.
Congress. I've only been there 100 days.
I
And I
don't
don't know
want
if
that.
I'm
I want to go down. No, I want to go there. Okay. Alan is your local media literacy expert, and I don't think he's in the area right now because he's doing something himself. But he's gonna, Alan, you're gonna have to come in and make yourself known to Mark so that the media literacy conversation can continue. And his question is, or his comment, something about authenticity.
You could question if that is a performance of authenticity.
Yes. So let's do that. Let's ask the questions about this. So who's the author and what's the purpose? Who's the author of this video?
Not Jeff.
Not him? Do you think he might have written his own words, or do you think he had a writer, a speechwriter, like politicians have?
Some of them do.
Yeah, maybe, maybe. What was his purpose in making this video?
Tell people not to trust Congress.
Well, yeah, to definitely give his perspective on what he's seeing there, right? And yeah, a lot of that was not to trust, especially the angry people, because of how he's seen them act differently. What techniques are used to attract and hold your attention?
How about the background?
What is the background?
The kitchen.
It's a kitchen.
And what's
He's
the
just
machine?
hanging out in the
What's the
kitchen.
machine on the counter?
Oh, it's like a coffee maker or something,
Okay.
right? Yeah. Yeah, he's just a down-home guy talking to you from your kitchen. It's almost like the fireside chats, right? And also, what lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented?
It's not all dressed up or anything, it's just regular guy.
Yeah,
Without
just a
t-shirt,
regular guy. Look at him,
sweatshirt.
he's got a sweatshirt
Sweater,
on,
yeah.
t-shirt underneath. He's just telling it like it is. Yeah, he wants to come off as a regular guy who just happens to be in Congress and is telling you what he has observed there. Yeah.
He's young.
And he's young. Yes, he
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
He's young. How might different people interpret the message? How do you think those angry voices in Congress interpreted this
That's how
I
message?
get angrier after that.
They are going to be still angry, I think, even more angry. And he has been really attacked because of this. So, what is omitted from the message?
Nothing about the good people. There's
Yeah, nothing about the good people he's met there, the people who are really trying to get stuff done, and they are there, right? But we don't hear about them that much. When I worked in high schools, I used to say, nobody comes in on Monday morning and says, I had such a great drug-free, sex-free weekend. And so did everybody else, you know? No, you only hear about whatever, all the parties that went wrong. Well, you know, it's part of our nature, I guess, to want to know the bad stuff. But yeah, he's playing to that. And if I played this for you again, which I'm not going to attempt, you would see how many cuts there are. I did a lot of video production, and there are a lot of cuts. So he had to do a lot of takes of each of those little bits of that. But you know, ends up being a pretty powerful video, I think. All right, so the big question comes down to, who do you trust? Who influences you and why? Who are the thought leaders and influencers you avoid and why? Which influencers and thought leaders have high levels of authority or authenticity in your mind? And an optional thing to think about is, who do you influence? How do you do it? And what makes you credible and trustworthy? Do we have any other grandparents in the room?
Yes.
Yeah, we do. And I'm guessing that you're probably an influencer for your grandkids. They look up to you. They, listen to you. And it's important that we understand that role of our own influence on other people. But when you have 1 million followers, or 2.3 million followers, or 6.7 million followers, like some of those influencers I showed earlier, I'm not sure they're thinking about all of that as much, but they might. They might. Does anybody want to answer any of those questions now? I was really giving you just kind of food for thought there. So the key ideas that I want you to take away from that section is that social media is reshaping people's decisions about who and what to trust. The impact of media influencers is based on both authority and authenticity. And you should watch out for influencers who use their impact to incite violence. It's also essential to be aware of our own influence on others. So what I want to do now is to take a look at some of those influencers who do use their influence for not so great purposes. And this is a term, conflict entrepreneurs, that I first came across when I was reading Amanda Ripley's book. Do you have it here? You do, Mark, great. High Conflict, which was one of the books that we read in the very beginning when we were planning Courageous RI. This is why we get trapped and how we get out, and I love the visual that whoever created this book cover made. It's because it feels like sometimes that's where we are. But in her book, Amanda Ripley talks about the difference between regular conflict that can be good and productive. You know, I mean, nothing really progresses without some kind of conflict. And even in our two-party system, when we used to agree to disagree, we could still get legislation passed and things done. But conflict, high conflict, is when it goes over the top and it's very unproductive. And that there are the conflict entrepreneurs, which I had never heard of before, and it was kind of a scary term to me, are people who actually use their influence for power, pleasure, or profit. So conflict entrepreneurs actually use 6 specific strategies to exploit the business model of media for pleasure, power, and profit. And the business model of social media especially is the more likes you get, the more hits you get, the more shares you have on a post, the more it is possible for you to get paid for who you are and what you're saying. So if you know, as conflict entrepreneurs do, that the thing that sells the most is fear, sex, anger, those are the things you're going to put into your messages that will capture people's attention and hold their attention. So Amanda Ripley and other researchers who have looked into the issue of conflict entrepreneurs have identified these 6 specific strategies. So they are the just asking questioners, the sensationalist storytellers, the home sleuthing amateurs, the contrarian experts, the grandstanding moralists, and the toxic mudslingers. So to get into a little bit further definitions of those, the just asking questioners shape a conversation by asking bad faith questions. I'm just asking here. But, but don't you think that so-and-so should have done such and such, that activate doubt or intensify either or thinking? The polarization is intentional, because the more we are polarized, the more we fight, the more angry we are, the more hits people get because their buttons are being pushed. The compelling storytellers use sensational, intriguing, emotional, or outrageous stories to shape conversations, even when they are baseless, speculative, or plainly false. The home sleuthing amateurs attract audience attention by finding and promoting unexplained phenomena or coincidences that seem at odds with official narratives. The contrarian experts increase visibility and status by exploiting journalistic norms of balance and neutrality to present a controversy that counters widely accepted beliefs. The grandstanding moralists express outrage to amplify the emotional power of a message and intensify conflict through polarization. And toxic mudslingers use character assassination, scapegoating, and blame to discredit opponents.
Where'd you get the pictures for these things?
Usually we just go to
Shutterfly.
Yeah, whatever, some free image generator. So we're back to why media literacy matters. And what we learned in doing the 2 years of Courageous Rhode Island, it just ended at the end of September, although we created something called the ripple effect, that anybody who attended one of our programs, if they took any piece of what they learned and replicated it in their library, in their classroom, in their school, in their church, we would pay them to do that. And so the ripple effect is kind of still happening, just like when you throw a rock into the pond and the ripples go out and out and out. And we're excited about that. But what we learned in the process was that using active listening and intellectual humility, that led to even more media literacy than we started with. And media literacy was good in starting the active listening and intellectual humility as well. So active listening is not just listening to respond, but actually trying to sense what people's thoughts and especially their feelings underneath what they're saying and what their thoughts are. To try and understand that, to process the message, to understand it. That means, like, if I hear you correctly, or did I hear you say that, to somehow check in with the person about whether you're getting what they're trying to say, and demonstrating a response.
I'm being influenced by those outfits.
Yeah, you are a visual learner, aren't you, my friend? Yeah, you're cluing into all of the visuals here. So what's intellectual humility? It's valuing other people's beliefs, resisting defensive behavior, and recognizing the limits of our own knowledge and fallibility, our ability to be wrong. So, just to give you a little bit more information about Courageous RI, it was a whole of society approach to reduce the fear and hate that leads to violence through media literacy, active listening, kindness and compassion, and community engagement. If anyone is interested in learning more about it, you can find us at courageousri.com. We have a website that has tons of information there. We actually even recorded all of our sessions, and we had an MIT team that's looking into the good uses of AI, help us create what we call the portal, where you can actually listen into those conversations that we had. And they are there. You just click, find a topic you like, because we had 11 different topics, and then listen into the conversation. But we have things for educators, lessons plans. So it was a 3-phase project. The first phase was called Courageous Conversations, and it was open to anyone, and it was all online. And because the Media Ed Lab is a global entity, we actually had people from all over the world, as well as all around Rhode Island and around the country, come, which really gave it, made it really special, because people would come back. Rhode Island is a very small state, and we're very insular in many ways, so it was exciting when somebody would come back to our synthesis time at the end of going into their breakout rooms, where they had their small group conversations, and say, there was somebody from India in my breakout room. They're having the same problems with their leaders as we are. And it was just so nice to see those kind of connections being made. The second program was based on, it was specifically for educators and librarians and youth workers, and it was to encourage them and provide materials for them to do media literacy with the youth in their charge. And the third program was actually a youth media message contest. So again, it was nation and worldwide, and we got submissions from all over. Youth were to go onto our website, our sneaky way of getting them there, because there was a $1,000 grand prize and $7,000 total in prizes. So it was good incentive, as money often is. But they created their own message in any of 4, video, audio, graphic design, or writing. And they just had to go to the website, figure out, around and see what we were trying to do, and then create a message. one of our grand prize winner was actually a young man who wrote a song about a grandparent and a child conversation about learning about the things that are on the media that may not be positive for you. And one of the second place winners created a beautiful graphic design. See if I can remember. It was a lit match was all it was. And if I can remember the slogan, it said, one match can burn down a house. One piece of information can burn down a democracy. And we put that up on a billboard on Route 95 the week of July 4th. And so the billboard company said that approximately 1.5 million people drove by it on that week going down to the beaches of Rhode Island. So, we wanted the youth to be empowered to know how to create messages and to have their messages put out there. I pretty much told you about that. This is our website that you can go to. So the tools that we used for Courageous RI were active listening, media literacy, kindness matters, and community engagement and empowerment. And you may not know it, but next week is Media Literacy Week around the United States. So it's a great time for learning even more about media literacy, and there's a lot of events happening all around the country and a lot of material online. I'll bet Alan might have something going on, maybe even nearby. Basically, I'm going to ask you to continue to take care of yourselves during this trying election season, to think about reducing your time online after I just showed you all these websites that you can go to. Think about reducing your time online, taking care of yourself, watching what pushes your buttons, and try and pause and reflect and take deep breaths. And this was our tagline for Courageous RI: stay curious, not furious. And we also said, have conversations, not confrontations, and help put the unity back into community. I think it's time that we learn how to listen to each other no matter what our viewpoints are, and I think media literacy can really help with that. I thank you for your time and attention, and I will take any questions from either the people who are here today or in the chat from people who are watching online.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself if you're on chat.
Yeah. Anybody here have a question?
The one slide you had up there is people sitting around like the campfire or sitting on the blanket.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you said at the end there gave me hope, because when I looked at that slide, I was like, is that even possible anymore?
Yeah.
But then from that point on, what you said about what you guys, what your organization is doing,
Yeah.
that gave me a little bit of hope, because I honestly, when I saw that slide, it was like, is that even possible anymore?
Yeah. Well, it's possible at my house. I got a fire pit and I've got people around it a lot of times.
So well, you gave me hope in what you said. As far as
That
what
really
you're doing.
makes my day. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for saying
Yeah.
that. Hope is sometimes all we've got to go on, right? And I also, I've been around, I'm 75, so I've been around for a long time, and I've seen the pendulum swing back and forth. And this is a tough one because of the social media, because of the technology. And the technology is changing at such an incredibly ever-increasing pace. But those 5 questions remain the same for any media message that you want to take the time to analyze. And taking the time is really an important thing to do. And so we're really pushing right now to get schools and school systems to mainstream media literacy into their curriculum. I think 7 states so far have already done that. And there's an organization called Media Literacy Now that is out of Boston, Massachusetts, that has, actually Alan is the state coordinator, who's here joining us online, state coordinator for Pennsylvania. He could always use more help, so if you're interested in joining the fight. We try to get legislation passed, so the Media Ed Lab and what I just showed you is the education kind of bottom up. Let's teach our kids all how to become better media consumers. But Media Literacy Now is a top down. Let's get our legislators and our state legislators to integrate media literacy into the classroom. So we're working from both sides and hoping to get this, but we're also doing presentations like this, so we really thank you. Any other questions coming in?
No, Alan, though, has shared a link to a resource he developed for an elections-related media literacy guide.
Great.
So thank you, Alan. And he's also shared his email address,
Wonderful.
which I can
Is that
definitely
something you
send
can
out
send
to
out
the
to-
people
Yeah.
in the room.
To the registrants?
Yeah.
That would be great. Yeah. Yes.
Not a question, but that's up there now. It makes me think of all the political ads every 10 minutes on, I mean, I'm sick of all of them,
Yeah.
you know, because.
Because they're a lot more furious than curious,
Yes,
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And you never know what's true and what isn't.
Yeah.
From
And that's
either
what, I
side.
mean, people have election, campaign season fatigue. I mean, especially you guys in swing states. I mean, I feel bad for you. I'm glad I'm only here for 4 days because it was hard even just for that. Yeah, it's difficult. So go out for a walk. Read a good book, right, Alan? Right, Mark? I bet Mark could make a lot of recommendations. Actually, he put some over here on the shelf. A lot of the books that we read in creating Courageous RI are there.
And I did send out your
the
handout
resource list.
to the resource list to the people who are on Zoom. So
Excellent.
that is a link you should have gotten. If you
Terrific.
didn't, let me know.
Yeah.
I have a question. I got here a few minutes late. Is
Yeah.
Courageous RI a book?
No, it's a program.
Okay.
It's a Department of Homeland Security funded program
Oh.
in Rhode Island, although we had a national and international reach because it was all online. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
I always wanted to try a social experiment. I was gonna run for office someday, and my campaign was gonna be based on all the good things about my opponent. I would research my opponent, his whole life, and pick out all the good things about him or her, and that's all. That's all I would talk about, see how many votes I would get. See what-
Yeah, I love it. You should try it. Run as an independent. That would definitely give people pause, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It'd be different.
I think your opponent would probably win that.
Yeah,
Well, but it
that
would-
wouldn't matter, it wouldn't matter to me, I just,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
as a thought experiment.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to create a network called Good News, where you just showed the good news of things, because let's face it, good things are happening every single day, right? But the evening news or the morning news is what I call the murder and mayhem report. For the same reason that we talked about earlier. You know, the thing that catches our eyeballs, which is what they say in the business, in the media business, we need to capture eyeballs. And so to capture your eyeballs, they want to get your emotions up. So they want to get you angry, or they want to get you excited, or they want to get you whatever. You know, and now because there's been so many complaints, and as a consumer, you can be an activist as well. You know, our things that you can do, the parts of media literacy are access. First of all, it's important to have access to media, right? I mean, we found that out during the pandemic, that not every kid in the country had a computer at home or could go online and learn. And so a whole swath of kids just really took a hit during the pandemic as far as their education went. Access is important. It's why libraries are important for so many people, because they provide computer access to people who need it and don't have it at home. Analyze is the second one, so we just went through some analysis to show you how it's done. And evaluate, and then reflect on what you've learned, and act. We've added act as the last one in the stages of media literacy, because we really don't want people to just be passive consumers. That's what TV and computers do to us often, is just make us, sit there and take stuff in. We want you to become creators and to take action about things. So ask your school superintendent if they have media literacy in the schools, and or create your own positive messages about, maybe you could even do it now. Like, just do you have any online social media accounts? Facebook or whatever? You could find some local thing on both sides of a race and just say the nice things about them. Yeah, could work. I love that idea. Anything else?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yes.
For a couple of years, about a year, had one section that was all good news.
Uh-huh. Yes.
Then it went away. I don't know what happened.
It didn't bring in enough revenue, obviously. I mean, it really does come down to the money, and that's why part of media literacy is getting kids to understand the business model of the media. That whole, likes or hits, or, for newspapers, it was always circulation. How many readers do you have? And that was really difficult. Newspapers almost disappeared completely, and many of them did, while they were making the transition to online journalism, and figure out how to charge people for something that they could get for free pretty easily. So, yeah, there's a lot about media literacy. It has become a bit more known than when I started 25 years ago, but it's mostly because of the disinformation and misinformation that has been so rampant in the last 5 to 10 years, that people are all of a sudden saying, we should do something about this, and we're saying, we're trying, we're trying. I know that this was supposed to end at 7:30. I don't want to go too far over. If there weren't any other questions, Mark, we can call it a night.
No, thank you so much, Pam.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for participating.
Thank
And
you.
I've got